As a pulmonologist, I get to see the lungs up close every day. But today, I want to take you on a journey to go way beyond the inhaler and deep inside the airways to see what is really going on during an asthma attack. We're going to unpack the science behind that chest tightness, that wheeze, that cough, and really get it on a cellular level. Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the airway itself, what makes it so different even before an attack. Then we'll dive into the immune system's over-the-top reaction, watch that immediate airway squeeze happen in real time, unpack the inflammation that lingers, and finally look at the permanent changes, the scars left behind.
So first things first, you have to understand that an asthmatic airway is fundamentally different from a healthy one, even on a really good day when you're breathing just fine. The stage is, you could say, already set for drama.
And this slide shows that difference perfectly. On the left, you've got a normal, happy airway, wide open and calm. But on the right, that's the asthmatic airway. See, even without a trigger, it's living in this constant state of low-grade inflammation. It's sensitive. We call this hyper-responsiveness, and it basically means it's primed and ready to totally overreact.
This twitchiness, or airway hyperresponsiveness, if you want the technical term, is really the absolute core feature of asthma. The airways just freak out over things that wouldn't even register for someone else, like a bit of cold air or some dust. It's like the airway's security system is so jumpy, it calls in a SWAT team for a stray cat.
So what happens when a trigger, like pollen or dust mites, actually gets into this hyper-responsive airway? Well, the immune system sounds a false alarm, and it mobilizes this incredibly complex army of cells.
First on the scene are the sentinels, the dendritic cells. These guys are patrolling the lining of your airway, and when they spot an allergen, they snatch it up, process it, and get ready to show it to the higher-ups in the immune system.
So, the dendritic cells take that allergen and present it to the generals of this whole operation, the T helper 2 cells, or Th2 cells. In asthma, it's the Th2 response that's really running the show. Once they're activated, they take command and just start blasting out chemical orders. And those orders are called cytokines. Now, 3 of them are especially important here. You've got interleukin-4, or IL-4, which kicks off the production of allergic antibodies. Then there's interleukin-5, or IL-5, which is like a recruitment signal for a very specific type of inflammatory cell. And finally, interleukin-13, or IL-13, which cranks up mucus production. Altogether, they set the whole stage for a classic asthma attack. All right, so all the orders have been sent. Now, let's see what happens next. This triggers a crazy fast chain reaction that you feel within minutes. This is that immediate, acute part of an asthma attack. This slide lays out the cascade perfectly. That IL-4 order we talked about, it makes these IgE antibodies stick all over the surface of mast cells, basically priming them like tiny grenades. So when the allergen shows up again and connects to that IgE, the mast cells just detonate. They release a flood of histamine. And histamine is the key player here. It instantly screams at the smooth muscles around your airways to squeeze hard. That's bronchoconstriction. And that intense muscle spasm, plus all that extra mucus from the IL-13 signal, that's the feeling of an asthma attack. The wheezing, the coughing, the feeling like you just can't get enough air. It's a terrifying event, but the key here is that at this stage, it's usually reversible with medication.
But here's the thing. The story does not end when that initial spasm calms down. Not even close. A second, much more damaging wave of inflammation is just getting started, and it arrives hours after that initial trigger.
Remember that IL-5 signal? Well, it's a call for the eosinophils. I like to call them the demolition crew. They show up late to the party, hours after the attack starts, and they release these toxic proteins that cause some serious collateral damage, really hurting the delicate cells that line the airway.
Now this is a really crucial point, the shift from reversible damage to something permanent. At first, your body can repair the damage from these attacks, but every single attack creates this cycle of injury and repair. And over many, many years, those repairs start to get sloppy. The body begins to lay down scar tissue, and the very architecture of the airway begins to change for good.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most critical part of this whole story, the long-term result, known as airway remodeling. This is where asthma can go from being a completely reversible condition to one with a fixed, permanent narrowing of the airways.
So what is airway remodeling? It's the physical thickening and stiffening of the airway walls. It's a direct result of that relentless cycle of damage from cells like eosinophils and the healing process that follows. The airway is literally being rebuilt, but it's being rebuilt all wrong.
And these changes are comprehensive. It's not just one thing. The basement membrane, which is right under the surface cells, gets thicker. You get deposits of scar tissue or fibrosis. The number of glands that produce mucus actually multiplies, so you're chronically making too much of it. And, most importantly, the smooth muscle itself grows.
And this muscle growth happens in two different ways. Hyperplasia means you just get more smooth muscle cells, and hypertrophy means the cells you already have get bigger and stronger, they bulk up. So the end result is a thicker, more powerful muscle layer that can squeeze the airway shut even more forcefully.
So why does this happen? Well, we're learning that the constant damage to the airway's lining triggers the release of these potent growth factors. You can think of them as chemical signals that soak down into the muscle layer below, basically sending a nonstop message that says, grow, get bigger, get stronger. And this really leaves us with a fascinating final question. If the airway is physically rebuilt in this dysfunctional way, are we just managing a temporary reaction with our inhalers, or are we fighting against a brand new, permanent anatomical structure? Figuring out how to stop or maybe even reverse this remodeling, well, that's one of the biggest goals in asthma research today.